Yes.
Ani samala samde tashdele tha ani samakuzu de oye shayis.
So tashideleg everyone. I hope all of you are keeping well.
Tini ngazu danda di ngo tsora sanji Oye sanje cheda tsuji chona lawe chanju bade dani jazu jin dagi jinzu jibe tsonam jin dola penche sanje drobo esho Sanje cheda tsuji chona lawe chanju bade dani jazu jin dagi jinzu jibe tsonam jin dola penche sanje drobo esho Sanje cheda tsuji chona lawe chanju bade dani jazu jin dagi jinzu jibe tsonam jin dola penche sanje drobo esho Sumjian tangji dewa dan dewe judan denpa juji Dunye da dunye ge judan dewa juji Dunye mebe dewa tangpa daimin dewa juji Nyerien chada nindan dewe tanyang chenpo la dewa juji Sumjian tangji dewa dan dewe judan denpa juji Dunye da dunye ge judan dewa juji Dunye mebe dewa tangpa daimin dewa juji Nyerien chada nindan dewe tanyang chenpo la dewa juji Sumjian tangji dewa dan dewe judan denpa juji Dunye da dunye ge judan dewa juji Dunye mebe dewa tangpa daimin dewa juji Nyerien chada nindan dewe tanyang chenpo la dewa juji
So before we move along with the text, are there any questions and doubts up until this point?
So
if there are no questions, that means you have understood everything up till this point.
Yeah, trust you.
The different? The deities, the kunda dundera. Dilha idam karim be modrij nan to gres.
I didn't go room is ra fesudi. The pai de penduchi de ra. The paternity Rajai Kepadra. Tissue the children gumble. The change the tipper the shenres in the domain.
Jing the make the avatam.
This changes ra. The Tumbache. Ani the Najan Jambea. The pages on the Melay.
So then in that corner, that's Guru Padmasambhava. And here, next to the Buddha, that's Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion. Then that's the Buddha. And here is Manjushri. Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom. And if you see there, that's the medicine Buddha. Yeah. Yes.
The cousin Nilan the Mishi Hai Shin and Hira. The Tachitan Chibaro Rishikoni, Chikalan Kode Wogoya di and Yamne Cheshia Cheda and Susulatis consider Rachidli Isra. And in Namdo Paya and Simba Papi, the Masi di Dosasra. Chitanga the same Nato Mamuji Pawaina, San Rashig Huluda in Chedo. And the same Papi with the Hulu Mayu Chid Karana, and the same Nato Marashara. Ani chashi da mada su, ani namto da mada sha, ani da chigin sanju duja da mada nyen, ani nga zi pa me pebo meba chagda. Chig dindi jirish.
So then, before moving along with the text, maybe we make the time to address some of the sharings that we had in the first session. And now, as we have addressed almost most of the sharings, then it almost looks as if many of these are quite similar in their nature. So one of us talked about how they needed a break, and as such they came here, and also they talked about the fact that they, in their daily lives, they have the experience of being overwhelmed with the thoughts that arise in their minds. So we already kind of discussed this, the importance of restraining the sense doors and the importance of cultivating a practice which can help us overcome our discursive thoughts. And unless and until we kind of realize that we cannot run after every single thought that pops into our minds, then we cannot hope to achieve a sense of peace and calm in our daily lives.
Tene karsa borina la chi karsna lo kuyang bo se tangasra hi kuyang bo shilasha ani nyamnyo ya wara wata ani sem dechi ya ichi de ani ta kanda sem kuyang bo la dikhala na ngan zamza ende da cha sem chik chon mo ta ne dilli da ra sem chik gana pe shu chumbu ga du na pe shu chumbu du ra chidang ge sem je kuyang bo ne kangi kharathin na te dole che te zira lamsa khora khala orta pena dungero chuena tati ngara mado this the color ta ngachi pula chungu du sa so ge ya ada de ne yosi gre nga zo khwal ne dio re ani chamala dunge yore ne do ya an zamza dunge yumba ina ya dunge gi jele dewaj le gre so kuyang ta te peke chamdra the same kuyang boda so this loja chambu yona ni lula rashi gi phengda same de chagi same kusu tobo same pede gi so kangi tena nga matola ani dinde yungu mare ti kharichin ngala yungu dinde do pe chunju samdena ani gali so lula ne da ani lisani kan ne ra same kuyang buche peke chamdra.
So then moving on, one of us talked about how they came here really with an intention to cultivate an open mind and an open heart, and they talked about how they value experiential learning. So now when we say that we want to cultivate an open mind and an open heart, we need to understand exactly what do we mean by open. And openness herein refers to cultivating a breadth of perspective, a perspective which takes into account all possibilities and being open to these possibilities. This is what we mean by cultivating a breadth of perspective. So think about it in this manner. Whenever you feel disturbed, look at the manner in which you react to a situation. And more often than not, we have a pronounced feeling of hurt, disappointment. This comes from the fact that we have an emotional reaction to the situation. And when we have such a reaction to the situation, then our perspective becomes very restricted. It becomes very narrow in the sense we are only concerned about the fact that we are suffering. And then we begin to say that, why is this happening to me? Why is it only happening to me? And so forth. And then the perspective becomes very, very narrow and restricted. So in its place, if we want to cultivate an open heart and open mind, we should cultivate our spiritual practice in a way wherein we can develop a breadth of perspective whenever we face a set of challenges or adverse situations, that we do not really have such a narrow way of reacting to it. We cultivate a breadth of perspective which takes into account that this is indeed possible, it is liable to happen, and as such it indeed did happen. Now, as opposed to that, if we always have like a pronounced emotional reaction to the situation, then we become anxious, agitated, and then our minds and heart cannot ever be cultivated in a manner in which it can become more open. So if we are able to really cultivate an open heart and open mind, then it must come from cultivating a breadth of perspective which takes into account all possibilities. So from the Buddhist perspective, we talk about the nature of our existence in samsara being itself suffering. So as such, when we come into suffering, we shouldn't really be surprised that we come into suffering. So this is the manner in which one is advised to cultivate an attitude which can help us to cultivate a more open heart and a more open mind. Yes.
아니 semba kuyang bola diga la ya chi shil gemutsi ro ji shik namju chi bomai senting ne da khalo semba kuyang bu ya de peke chamdra so ji sen ji khalo ta shilo la gando khawo chindo khawo ya do khawo chi bu chi mara chema mai be gra shen ki pe semla de chi to tu ya kuyang bu chan ngone ta ti khalo semba kuyang bro an zamza mi do tu na gimro zumara she kushoro zuma dende do di 딱딱지 되고 말고 라 탑샤주로 좀 의네스 쳐봐 말아 안테네 많이 배 좀 많이 배서 다 딘데지 요알아야 지지 로종로 체 배셔도 로 아니 있어서 가네 오늘 전에 셀 시딜리아지 소고다더라
So at this point I also find it important that when we say that we need to be more open in our hearts and minds, then many times we kind of have the impression that maybe being open is making a show of it. Many people kind of have a performative approach to being open, wherein they are very smiley towards other people, try to be receptive of other people through their expressions only, but within their own minds, they still hold on to their narrow ways of thinking. So this is not what we mean by being open-minded and open-minded and having an open heart. It is not something performative. Having an open mind and having an open heart must come from some inner work that you do. So as such, one must really pay attention to the mind.
다치 카르라 됐나 아니 코라 레가 치디다 아니 멜렌 데와 치디가라다 소소치 야시디 치고 상거라 삼디가라 아니 치마투디가라 아니 선주 차야다오나 텔레 탑시 카레레라다 다소소에 레가 카리나레 아니 가르치게나 소소 지레 콘도도 저타도 다 카리나리 소소 내가 담보라는 체라 시세나세 야보시네 진고고도 요주도 마인게 가르소소라 급이라가디 딱딱다 체체 아니 다 미던 대화시디 다 미시가 다음으로 요라 가실롱 사워요레 가시 게셔망보 따라서시 소소 로카다 마토 바드니 망보 용 초고라 가시야 지글레가리 아 시슈치로 봐도 보이나 다 개마 jel질 치고레디 소소 하다보다 치데네 데데로 다강인 다음으로 용고라 딘데 용두가 아니 수기 카바산 다가 냠도 치에 하다보다 치고 엔데로라 카상야디 게첨버라 아니 딱 게데님이 좋았당 두고 메나 다 소소ங்கள라 파기 미디 가르치네 제 가르마제나 가만 소소ங்கள라 삼만나다 치체너라 주바메바지 ngara chegwe de gala makoya inare susu lenge tata chi samsanji lolo jiba mebe china digora mitsama ngazogi loka jitu mare ine rogba de tambon lega chidigana ani ngochu ta ngazo lega di chigore ngazo sama chi kishise nase da tambo dasha da chi chamege nyabru chini chigola tuduche ke kechimora ngazo meinza ani susu pa korana pagese heji chigira ante chini shuba physical tendo ho marestra.
So then moving on, one of us talked about the problem they face, wherein they have the fear that maybe they are failing to live up to others' expectations or not being able to kind of do their best, and as a result of which they struggle with a sense of inadequacy. Now herein, when we struggle with such feelings, it is important first to be honest with ourselves and honest with the expectations that we built with regards to a situation, with regards to our professional lives and so forth, even with regards to relationships and so forth. And it might be the case that in the interactions, relationships, in our professional as well as personal lives, that many times, indeed, that not just the expectations one has of each other, but the very nature, the inclination of the people that we work with, that we have a relationship with, do not really incline with us. So as such, it is first important to address this, that really we have different ways of looking at these things, we have different approaches, and to try to kind of work it out with that kind of approach first. And if we are able to do this, then we have the grounds from which now the interaction can become more honest, rather than each one projecting their expectations onto each other and then being disappointed that the other does not live up to their expectations. So first, when you notice that maybe things are not quite agreeable between the two of you, it is important to kind of talk about it first, to address that these are the kind of differences and difficulties that you face. And now, even after such a discussion, if things do not work out, then we go back to being honest with ourselves, wherein we say, okay, honest with ourselves in the sense that you have tried everything at your disposal, within your means, to address the situation, to try to make it better, and you yourself gave your best in trying to maybe live up to their expectations of what they expect of you. And if you are able to do that, then you come to an acceptance that this is the best, now it cannot be helped. So rather than living in regret of not living up to someone's expectations, you do not live with the regret that you didn't give your best at all. Yes.
다 담마들이야 이래서 딜라 칼라도 semba kuzang yambalai ma chendro chasra teje khande chegores ta senla tangje majena ta senla tangje majena ga zukangi mom thide cheso senla tangje chede ga zu tanda khaza teshi de adlan tindi dura ani da kono tembo khandas chegore la da susu lega karina nonsu chik lega di maje gi nyala tambo susu ga di chego jinse thongora ra lega lobjo chena ga di lobjo chena ga di chigi sayachi 다 내가 가리나 총자야 이날에 캄바자야 이날에 지글레군 다 가리 내가 가리는 뭐 담부디 지어라 그 미유지도 지어라 봐 아니 딩고츠 차대가라 아니 다 디가래 강연 ram데 테시 그래 텐전 잠만자 탄디 만디 럭바 테마데 가리는 거다 수수기 미 담보 미 샤주디 템보치네 들라다 담만 가르치는 딱봐 루트워지 제 뺏게 좀다 심바가서 미스는 잠자 내가 델을 찍고주 델래야 찍만디 야 파르지 빠르들래 가야 되면은 차이다. 라. 근데 인디가라 아니 소소 담보 미 내가 맞쟁이라 미유디 가리입니다. 되게 팬도 유메 야포지 담에 계셔버라. 라. 담보 야부마다 차이 쓰기로 오지 아 디체는 디길라 디질 오다 디야모 님림도 야 시만 좋아 땅되는 아니 수수기디 내가 가는 치나 둔데 되는 깔래카보다. 담보 소소소 밀 계지 티고 있는 티 소소 산나 땅 있는 땅 아니 기당이 내가 가리는 따야 따라 진섬 다때 제는 오늘 야포도선 로타 치비가네 아니 디만두버다 디버루가에 가르치는 데라 동네세 아 고노든지 말에 뜻에 뺏기십니다.
So then moving on, one of us talked about the difficulty they find in developing a strong motivation in their lives. And now, from the Buddhist perspective, we place a lot of importance on motivation with regards to spiritual practice. But I think that it applies to all facets of our lives, the importance of motivation. Now, before we undertake any activity, anything we do in life, it must be preceded by a sense of motivation, a sense of intention. Now, if we want to develop a strong intention, then where exactly does this motivation come from in the first place? This is important to understand. And when we look at it, we develop a strong motivation when we become fully convinced of the purpose of what we are doing. So as such, in order for us to find a strong motivation, it is important for us to kind of become fully convinced of the purpose of what we are doing. And so as such, before we undertake any activity, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly is the purpose of what I am doing? What exactly am I doing it for? And if you are able to do this, maybe you might struggle to find that purpose on your own. So in that, it is important to ask other people, to discuss this with other people, to hear from other people. And based on that conviction, you gain again, by thinking about the purpose, then you can develop a strong motivation. Unless and until you yourself are not convinced of the purpose, then even if you develop a motivation to do something, such as going into business, building a house, or whatever you undertake, then at the slightest kind of adverse condition you face, then you immediately begin to question what you are doing. So as such, it is important that our purpose is informed by a sense, that the motivation that we develop to do something is informed by a sense of purpose.
Suzuki kunu tempo chik de karalana. Suzuki nala daya chi kechumra. Ra mijigi chigidula di chena te kala khabra. Pena mijigi namda tangi de nga namda tangi lana. Suzuki njengi de logo de ra ani te samota pora. Ani ya chigi takala. Member shiona. Suzuki member chela toa da gawachi tambo ale due. Ni member chena ngala ni tende zusen chetu sare. Ni neba damna yusir tak me neba la digala kosti lula kangisten nan legora. Le digala kol sela madewa yus. Tina nyomba yusigere chika kashi paya pojana tsikhange tsinge ja sigere. Ta payila chika tandi mandi mambu yungora. Tu samala zusen chewara. Tigi zusen chetu nipa de ngal due mida. Tigi lega dinge damna ra. Susula di meba thona nga kulun sawoda nga di apo chetu samarasana. Di njemda ko lega yaboinda lacha yaboina taimda. Susu di kazizi shitu sare. Ra. Tende tempoji susugi gashoji ani kunu tempoji shane ani lega den gosuena pechimizna lelhaya. Ra. Susu gasa lega shimbaji she. Ani ya chigi migi la jodo da migi chigidula nga di chigilana. De kyo kulun zamza tududa. De chagado ani chidigala tachimatu ani yang kangete ya lega njawatanda tende chagara.
So then an example which highlights the manner in which we do not develop strong motivations with regards to what we are pursuing is in this manner, that you begin to see someone who has become a pilot or a doctor, and then you begin to think that, okay, now I am motivated to become a pilot or a doctor. And maybe that fails to take into account the importance of understanding the purpose behind developing such a motivation. You are simply inspired by someone else. That in itself cannot be enough, because you have to take into account that when you become a pilot or when you become a doctor, would you be really able to face the challenges of these jobs head on? Do you really have the capacity to kind of face the rigors and challenges of such a job? And when other people look at these challenges, it should be the case that when you find the purpose behind your motivation, that these challenges are a source of joy for you. And we normally lose joy in what we are doing because we do not think about the purpose, or we forget the purpose of what we are doing. And as such, over the course of time, we lose our motivation. Yes.
Didi chidang peche nye chunzul lagwa yachi marishira. Chidang chito nala chiranza nimat nima laga chirinda digala. Peche mi tsamala nyamnyu yorwa. Zamza nyamnyu di susu ya sanna tangma tangi chibayo. Nyamnyu saa de waro de ya digala ya chiganzu sanna ma tang lhadi ya tende unsigirwa. Tende.
So I really don't think that I have to stress these things too much, because all of you have your professional lives and you go about your professional lives. And I'm sure you had experiences like this. And now, even though you might have had experiences like this, I think it is important to kind of think about these experiences and make sense of these experiences. We just go through it and then do not really pay much attention to it and the implications of these experiences.
Tati che ta ganzu khazang gi dil ndora nanzo nasudla. Ana ganzu de teta kondu khoye phunzu jis yimeki ji tsaya me jin tse ko to tabada chune de tsengi ji ba la la ra ninju ji tsidin ro tsare shiloka ta tubale do abadi tsane ne ta dil khala na ta kisi ani dende de tsengi ninju ji ba ganzu ninju shansa ya ta tawasul sharwa ta ine dende ngenju che bitse dende jimba ina ya aslaura ngenju che go ke chamba da ngenju che bitse dende jimba ina ya dati kare gola ne ngenju che patsamji yan digo marasra nela te ngenju shanchu sem kasa ngenju te ao ngenju te namda senji ji islara ngenju de pe namba tabegi ani senji bi gonesra namba tabe shanchu gu senji ji simba mena lame shanchu ji tende yita ngenju de ani shanchu sengi tsesimba ji go resra tende masina ani lame shanchu dobe sanje ko panta ya jinju ma le do simba mena lame shanchu ji phunzu dewe la de phunzu dewa da sanje ko pala so ra tende yu ji dinju thung ma res tende insan ani loden namji shanchu senji 초 그래서 senju jes 제가 담보가 돌에 연주 제고에 대 개체모지라 거기 안에 동해도 진 돌에 연주 제 연주 제와 상지게 만디 봐라 연주 제비 제라 안에 대지 senju기 심바주고 레스라 연주 집부제와 상지 되고 말 대지 senju기 심바주고 그래 근데 심바이나 아니 가서 폰소 대회 줄라데다 사제 고바타바기 주고 레스 계시 연주 집부제와 상지게 아니 사제 고바타야기 주다 아니 근데긴 로투고 말레스 라그와 근데 인자 안에 로다데 만나지 아니 산주기 센터라지 레치오 레스.
So now we will move along with the root text itself. We are now at verse number 6. Yet, if this renunciation is not embraced by the pure motivation of bodhicitta, it will not become a cause for the perfect bliss of unsurpassed awakening. So the wise should generate supreme bodhicitta. Now, in the previous verses, we talked about the purpose of generating developing renunciation, the manner in which one develops renunciation, and the measure of having developed true renunciation. Now, even if you as a spiritual practitioner have developed such a true renunciation, that renunciation in itself is not enough. So the verse number 6, it says, yet if this renunciation is not embraced by the pure motivation of bodhicitta, now embraced herein means sustained. Yet if this renunciation is not sustained by the pure motivation of bodhicitta, bodhicitta herein referring to the awakening mind of altruistic intention, of being of benefit to all sentient beings. So unless and until this renunciation that you have developed is not sustained by the altruistic intention of being of service to all other sentient beings, then it does not really become a cause for Buddhahood. It does not really become a contributing cause for Buddhahood. So as such, it is important to generate or develop the supreme bodhicitta. Bodhicitta herein referring to the awakening mind or the altruistic intention. Bless.
That's the bodhicitta la de shanchu gu sem yara. Shanchu gu sem gu tola de silabjon chinyu ya la question.
So herein, as we come to the discussion of bodhicitta, maybe at this point I want to see if there are any of you among us who have studied about bodhicitta before or heard about bodhicitta before. Yeah? Only one? Two. This coins.
네, 당아도 남배기 슈네 상주기 센다 니제다 돈일도 두개도 셔물어라. 이게 소소이 줄라 지기 야매 제고야다 아니 제나 편도 얘기로 시트되어라. 상주센라 있는 거네 다니다 아주 칼로다 샘디베 칼로 자와 첨보다 럽 첨보지르다. 근데 샘지유나 라 아주 젠드다 심마다 땡데 되어 되게 아니 람갈 루트투에 지르다 로 된데디 라
So, in the Buddhist spiritual traditions, then we place a lot of emphasis and special importance on the development of bodhicitta as an intention. So this is because we look at bodhicitta as the perfect embodiment of all the positive qualities of the mind, such as love, compassion, and so forth. And a Buddhist practitioner looks at the bodhicitta, that awakening mind, as the ultimate source of happiness. Thus.
Tatini, the Shanju Assembly, the Kandijilla was Nangazu, Koragi Wodo, the Kalana, Tilara, Gender, the Zoshan like Mihi, Rangi Tos, the Chibi, the Bada, Sude, the Chibi, Tashan Lam, Jugochi, Zoe, Namri. Then they wish Shanju Assembly and Rajula Chevina, and the Tebachimbo to Saba. Ra, Kasana could Tebachilla, Lojachi Chibashawara, Zuda, Benjo, the Jono, the Tindita Chelushama, Logi Jachin, Logi. Passenger Jachimbola Tangtuma to Chiba, so the Nishira, you same thing.
So now, if we look at what exactly does bodhicitta mean, then we need to look at the traditional way in which bodhicitta is defined technically. And in this definition, we begin to understand the level of practice as well as what exactly is this altruistic intention. So, as a definition, bodhicitta is defined as that altruistic intention aimed at alleviating the suffering of others. Then one develops the wish to achieve perfect enlightenment. So, in short, the wish to achieve perfect enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And then the other part of this definition talks about the level of practice that this altruistic intention or this awakening mind of bodhicitta is the entry or the gateway to the Mahayana path. Thus.
Tadini, and Shanju Semdula, Cheta Shanju Serajula Chevala, Junior Restra, Jinde Menga Dengo and Senchi, Shanju Serajula Chevala, Jine Menga Dengo and Senchita, and a Dashin Yamji going to Senchita years.
So, if we understand this, then how do we exactly develop such an altruistic intention? How can we generate within ourselves such an altruistic intention? So we talk about two methods to develop such an altruistic intention. One, through what is called the 7 precepts of causes and fruit, which is a gradual manner in which one develops this altruistic intention. And then the other is what we call the process of equalizing and exchanging the self with others.
Sorry, the first one, 7?
7 precepts of causes and fruit.
7 precepts?
Tatanda Dashin Yamjela Digala, Susu Dewan Debata, Dungim Deva Chipa Imanashigi, Ra, Pashupula Tararas, Pagitla Dewan Debata, Dungim, Ra, Tindi Chitu in Batang Digana, Simji Juta to take Keshamuda, and then the data tumor. Susula Deo Gore, Yen Yotor, Ra, Yendi Karachina, Nana, Shina, Shana, Yameta. Susula Deo Gore, Susula Tits Chikangitan, this Tumda. Saying any cheaper shas, Ra, Tandu Dimati. Not Tangoni de Duchiparish, Tanto Tele and Chiki, Dewa down Chick, Coco Yagate, partiality to me. Ra, Dashin Yamba Jola, Ra, Rani Dewa the partiality to her. The Jagi doing the translator. You know, to doing it and the Katu de Lay, that Chunsala Chica, modern door and Natsuchido, the Koyasa the missionability to it. Ra, Coco in the Zansa the military to her. Ra, middle pay color, Tondo Shani. Cool, Nala de Ogopanaji, Cola Gore, Ten sang a color cook up the tea. Diliging on the Luchura. And so Teledo, not dinner duration, but I ought to do.
So now the second of these two, which is the process of equalizing the self, equalizing and exchanging the self with others. Now this, we kind of touched upon it in our discussions about how if we are to develop a sense of concern for others, first we must accept the fact that we are all equal in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. So this is the kind of common experience that we all have. Now, based on this acceptance of the common experience, then instead of developing conceptions of nearness and farness, we have attachment towards what we call I and mine. and then we have aversion towards what does not belong to the I. So rather than these, by contemplating on this again and again, this common experience again and again, then we do away with conceptions of nearness and farness and look at all sentient beings as equal, developing an attitude of equanimity. And then gradually through contemplating on that attitude of equanimity, you come to a place wherein you begin to offer all your joy, happiness to others, and you begin to take upon yourself their suffering. Now, at first, when you first hear this might sound like too far-fetched, but there are plenty of such examples in our daily lives. For example, when we say that offering your joy, comfort, and happiness to others and taking on their suffering and discomfort, think about the fact that in a bus, there is the example of someone offering their seat to someone who needs it. So this is a small example of it. Yes.
Tane lama chiba nala karasun disunda machundri diru dingu malu tata tala membata dagi degi jena tawai dogo deda de machinchi labs tata zadaji jetsu no jreda machundri diru dingu kala ma susugita tanga tatiya tanda mashiban ligda kanda dinde susugi majisumja taji dungedra machundri diru dingu malu tata tala membata sra kunzugi dunge chamangara membata dagi degi jala susula gewada dewada kariyo waina pajela taw ra kasa machindo yidu ngamali tata tala mbata dagi degi jala tawai ani dogo de machinjila tizu nganzu pe sanu ta thu kal khawra tendegi lo jiyo na lotab jiyo na ra tata samakala na daje nyamji asenchi tiro jreda.
So now when we say that there are such examples in our own daily lives, then with regards to generating such a strong altruistic intention, then of course the process first starts with visualization practices, wherein in your meditation you begin to visualize that you are indeed taking on the suffering of others, and then that you are indeed giving your happiness and joy and so forth to others. So when we look at a text such as the Guru Puja, then we find instructions with regards to visualization practices along these lines, that you begin to meditate and visualize that that all mother sentient beings, because we refer to sentient beings as our mothers. Now we will discuss this further when we talk about the 7 precepts of causes and fruit. So there are verses which reads along the line of all mother sentient beings, without any exception, I take their suffering upon myself, and I offer all of my joy, happiness, without exception, to all mother sentient beings. Now, when we look at such verses, then it indeed dawns on us that this is a very profound intention and a profound motivation, and as such it takes a lot of courage to kind of open your minds in this manner. So this is the reason why in the process of developing the altruistic intention, one first starts with the process of visualization to be able to do it mentally first.
Taganasi lotion tsiji me tanda shiloga dumba dinna doa nara dona ngoda juba is pende manam kola bus ra chik kesin do duwa ina ngos soso ge pa pemba di ngos pa duwa ina re jibe ko soso khadu duma de mesha banga to duwa ina re ane pende manam kola bu chik pemba da dewa do ani soso gi soso ta majin do ra sinja ta jela pambi wa tas ra mai no da du ta so mai la digala majin ro sunja thamje gi dunge ji ro dunge da kala ta ne ba ro da dunge du sawe da la le wa ya mi yi thi la nge le do la ne ya ji de chi ji de mai gi ro so gi ta de gi ga lo ji je wo res ra.
So now similarly, if we look at verse number 7 of the second root text, 8 verses of training the mind, then this is exactly what we mean when we say that when we say that one way of generating the altruistic intention is through the process of equalizing and exchanging the self for others. So verse number 7, in brief, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers. Mothers herein referring to sentient beings, and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. And now one important thing that herein it uses, stresses, secretly take upon myself their hurt and suffering. Now secretly herein refers to this kind of motivation being free from what we call the worldly concerns. Sometimes we do things out of us being concerned with a sense like other people might look at me differently. Other people might have a better perception of who I am as a person. And as such, I might gain something out of this. I might gain some fame, name out of this. So secretly herein refers to that this practice must be free from such selfish and worldly concerns.
다 된대 인데가 다 나온 건 잠자 카투줄로 합들링이 인데지 거치 두르서 세주 차잉이가라. 담보 쇼 총바지 진주 진주가 예리예리 제야. 지 랑가르나 겐고다 로파 체야로다 지민네 바라 지기 칼론도 투마튼들 로파 체야로라 장조 마다네 오네라 근데로 춘춘 체야라 빼나가 좀 야나도 바스난도 되가가 가시부 키디니네 도 nduzula de sateyato gengo duzula de sateyato chala du cha thuma tu da khare na roba che mabuda ra tambu dinde dinde chinji chinji nga je chin ani khale khale lo ji to kora thap do nga je lamsa dinde sola na susu ishe ge dunge chamale kal khabure ra chunsan에 공기 공부하니 전부 지도인 차로 거라. 가 가시 수수기 루야 렌체도 바제 뭐 땅토니들 리기도 파기 저거 또비 등에들진 라. 내가 가서 단다 된데기 로또 요 말데 진주질에 고맥해 참으래.
So now when we say that in the Buddhist spiritual traditions we place a lot of importance on developing such an altruistic intention, then it does not mean that one is able to immediately generate such an altruistic intention simply by contemplating on that process of equalizing the self with others. It is a process of transformation, as we already discussed, wherein we kind of build up the courage to be able to apply this motivation in our actions, in our daily lives. So at first glance, of course, I'm sure that all of us might have the same reaction, that maybe this is something beyond me. This is something that I cannot ever hope to do. This is something that I can never do. But this is not the attitude this is not the attitude with which one should approach the generation of the altruistic intention or bodhicitta. We must all start from some place. And as such, rather than immediately kind of aiming towards being able to be of benefit to all sentient beings, we can start from small things in our lives, wherein we try to offer our own sense of comfort, give up our own sense of comfort, our own sense of comfort for the sake of someone else. For example, as we discussed, offering your seat to someone who is in more need of it. And then as you are crossing the road, if some elderly is struggling with crossing the road, then trying to find time to kind of help them cross the road. So small examples like that. If we can learn to do it from this kind of small examples, irrespective of appearances, then later on, maybe this courage, this motivation develops further. Yes.
So
I want to ask you, do you really find it in yourself to help some people who are really in need? Small examples like this in your daily lives? Yes.
그런데 야 같이 신나오서 인가를 가진 지기는 되라 같이야 가서 당가라 두고이래 내가 지치라 그렇게 제부터 개체물에
Now since many of you say that you indeed try to help people in this manner, Now, with that being said, as I say that you must indeed find it within yourself to be able to do this in your daily lives. With that being said, I also find it important to stress that before you offer your help, ask them if they need your help, because sometimes we land into a lot of trouble. Some people are really insistent that they don't need any help, and some people become frightened when you kind of offer help out of nowhere. So it is important to communicate that first before that you are trying to help them, and if they do need help.
디 양아저 코유 치바도
Je.
다 별로 있는 당아저 미지 개고는 로빠 제자를 로빠 아고를 드는 드니 코라 괜찮아 통하죠. 로빠 거도 가라 가진 뒤거도 대세죠. 답다 이 버릇이야. 개모지 파게 들어있는 로빠 체로 코라 마투는 가서 로빠 체로 잘라지 짬마도는 얘기네 제로 채고라야도 지심제도 야도 바주도 들이래요. 대가도 마투는 수수도야도 다 추어도 이양쓰고 라. 디야 베베기 칼로다 리신 코라 로가라. 라. 다야 시소 심발라야 코라 당본이 베서서서 란자 페버로 지저온데가 연디가라 얘디 지엘라나 소소란 hin제 가시야 통주로지 코마투바로지 고시기도 디야 리슈 코라기 차다라면지 미디 쩨는데 라야케요 말아 소소 리슈 로라야라 근데 자가라 에네레사 무다가 시그로 받체나 피지 다 디사 가라이네 하고 말이지 남도로 지가 가시 자라 토니는 넘르레 테시그라마도 임바로시라 근데 이치바다.
So these kind of reactions we must anticipate, and I think these kind of different reactions come from the difference in the cultural environment, societal conditioning, and so forth. Now, in the Tibetan culture, it is kind of considered weird to ask someone if they need help. Because, for example, if a young person asks an older person, do you need help, then the older person looks at the young person weirdly. The young person, it is taken for granted that if a young person sees some elderly in need of help, then they just immediately go and help it without asking. And the old people do not really mind it. If they need help walking about a bit, if they need help with their luggage, anything they are carrying, if they need help with rearing their animals, anything, the young people, it is kind of considered totally acceptable, and it is almost taken granted that the young people must and will help any elderly who is in need of help. So in the Tibetan culture, we do not really have the need to ask someone if they need help. Now, this is different maybe in the Western culture, because in the Western culture, in the societal conditioning that you are brought up with, there is an emphasis on individuality, of being independent, and so forth. So that kind of sticks even when you are in your old age. When someone, without checking with you, begins to kind of immediately try to help you, then maybe that feels like an attack on your own sense of independence, on your individuality, and your own capacity sometimes. So we need to take into account these cultural differences. Now, I'm not saying that it is a fault in the culture. It's just the way that we are brought up, and that societal conditioning operates in this manner. And I'm sure that even in India, it is the same as in Tibet, that the young people really kind of offer their help to the elderly without too much questioning. Now in this day and age, maybe it's changed a bit. Yes.
이내 가서 이 리준이 치디 야포레 치디 두절라 라야 말이다. 수수수수 담보 마치는데 파마기 럽전테단다 게게기 럽전테단다 라래 그러면도 어디 야몬 디디 야물 라야 말. 인자 야포레셔라. 다 수수 있지나 베베기도 지나 수주가 되는 것을 내게 보고 춘주 아 gem발 할래가 제주는 빼래라네. 파마기 까지다니라. 당가로 데데네 디파기 메 보보모 말야가도 치드나 교초 말아야 들리 감들 게네스테. 바로들 수수가 인시샤 당가 제고에 힘 받지셔라. 다시도도 심바는 럽제테나 나 메라 가르치는 경우만 겐 저그레스 수수수 까마가 라야디 콜마 카를라비나 Tigal do or mato. Chi di dujare, chi di aporing, Tila Imera. So, another comshita. Amal Chinjuga de Lopsotanga, Chebashita. Tinechin Chebalem.
So I'm not, when I kind of highlight these differences, I'm not making it a point to say that this culture is bad or this culture is good. I'm not trying to point out faults in cultures. I'm just simply trying to point out the differences. And in these differences, we can learn from each other by appreciating these differences. For example, when I say that in the Tibetan culture, when I gave you this example, when we were young, if we are just sitting about while someone who is older than us is working, then our parents used to scold us. You really have a nerve on you to be like sitting idly when someone elder than you is like working. You should be helping them, or you should be doing this work for them. So this instills a sense of personal responsibility about helping someone elder than you or someone who needs help. Now, now, as opposed to this, in the Western culture, one is brought up with these ideas of being self-sustaining, being independent, or the importance of individuality and so forth. So it is the case that an elderly person related to a young child might be working and the child doesn't really feel the need to help them. And the elderly doesn't expect any help because they place a lot of importance on being able to do it themselves. So there are things that we can learn from both cultures. It doesn't necessarily mean that these differences highlight something as being bad or something as being good.
That is another Zamnina, la chicken, Roshu de Wishande, Chechun Zamni, the Chechun Rosh to Wara, Miss Amatu de Rat, and another de Jacomika Kazir, Nakamina and did Chichil Royala Kalekabu, Tuela Kalekabu, and a Kiri and Dangmanakai, Ra, Tinicipe, Nagamina, Tape, Kido, Jani Michonga to do in the house and Roshiliwa. That's not Miss Our parts of Shingora. Ra. Ani and City agent Roy and Tajan Tana, the coin, the tongue of some parts, pay Tanya which had order. Today, the Tanganas Mitsinal, Minganas, Miji Michan, Chibache, the Nalola, and Goko Kare, Pendo Kare, the Switzerland and the water. Had been Nushu by Shasho by Nushu, Jacob, the Jacob, mid the Mig Gaba, the Gaba, Sula Yaga, the Pembajita, the Nicarine and the Galanda Kitchamura. Niga Dipe, Tauchamil, and Yachi Womaim. She saw not a Kayula, a crown pember, Rogo the Pikichamura.
So now, in this day and age, the world, as travel becomes easier between countries and everything becomes more accessible, information and so forth, the world indeed is now becoming smaller day by day. That we are really growing closer to each other day by day. Now, think about this about maybe 2-3 decades ago. This was not possible. That many people from such different cultural backgrounds could gather in one place and effectively be able to communicate with each other. And this was not possible a few decades ago. But now in this day and age, due to the technological advancements, developments, everything is getting closer to each other. The world is growing smaller in this sense. So as such, we are always in touch with some other culture. We have access to some other cultures. And as such, it is important that we become appreciative of the cultural differences, become sensitive to the cultural differences, and more importantly, that we learn from these cultural differences. When I say that we need to learn from these cultural differences, I mean it in this sense that even though we might have an appreciation and are sensitive about the cultural differences, then we still might hold on to this kind of idea that this is my culture, so as such, this is the best. And then you do not really kind of become open to other cultures or learning from other cultures. So rather than developing such an attitude, it is important to be practical, that indeed we have to live with other cultures. So as such, it is practical to learn from these cultures, to see what are some good things that we can pick up from this culture, that we can kind of bring into our own daily lives. So similarly, if we have developed such attitudes between cultures, then there is more harmony. Yes.
Petsundo shana ender da pen nusho paro ne kini khajum yum da ra te khoro me tambu de labjate ta ne rishu ne ra tinga zo le chto pe tambu de chikto su tata keshulo la chik pari do ne su kini tata ke lu sa tata pe abu ku changma da ani ya da de la ine mi ya zo se chi bu da pe mo ro chik chi tro chene ke jagum da da no gemu ro shi a te de zo ne kashi pe le sha shimbo da 심바이나 직 되는 저 직 되는 방은 거기서 들으시는 아니 지금 저 가르친데 레라 로라야 도 남레라 미 제커스도 쓰이나라 레샤스도 도중간도 레 패키지입니다.
So if I give you a small example, then something that we as Easterners can pick up and we now are picking up from the Western cultures or the Western nations is the habit that they have of not littering. They really do take care of their garbage. Even if they have a party, a gathering, they kind of really take care of not littering the place. They take care of the garbage. So this is something that we could learn from the Western cultures. And similarly, the Western cultures can maybe learn the importance of patience, forbearance from the Eastern cultures, because even though when we go in the traffic in Eastern countries, it might appear chaotic, but there is a lot of patience involved in this, wherein even if two cars are touching each other, maybe in the Western this might have blown up into a full confrontation, but in Eastern cultures, people smile, horn, blow the horn, and then move about and go about their lives. So I find it like this, and how do you find it in your own experiences? So we stop here and break for tea. And as we gather again in half an hour, we will explore the 7 precepts of causes and fruit.